Chairman Coons. Thank you very much for your remarks. I think that all of you will find that I'm in violent agreement with everything that has been said, and I look forward to working with you on making some continued improvements. And Senator Shaheen, I could not agree with you more about the criticality of telecommunications infrastructure, particularly given the difficulties that we've had with Huawei, ZTE, and others that are trying to invade the entire 5G infrastructure system. I'd like to just step back for a moment, Mr. Nathan. I think you know a little bit of the history, but for my colleagues, I'd like to share the fact that I have some parental pride in what you're doing, because the design of what has now become the Development Finance Corporation was something I was deeply involved in as we transformed from the old OPIC to what you're leading right now. And at that point, we made some significant modifications in terms of what you're allowed to do, equity investment, for example. I don't think any of us, particularly people with business background, imagine that we got it exactly right. But I think that what we would hope to see is the ability to continue to improve. As you learn, as you try to deploy the funds that we've given you, finding rules that will help make you more and more effective. So I'm glad that this conversation is happening right now in terms of how we can get it done. I'll say another critical aspect of having the ability to improve is having individuals like yourself who have the relevant private sector experience and know how to invest. And I think we benefit from your experience, your predecessors like Adam Bowler and Ray Washburn. Having that type of business DNA makes your organization much more effective. And I think it makes us much more inclined to work with you to improve the various parameters that you've been given to operate so that you can become even more effective. One thing that you mentioned is that the best recipe for alleviating poverty, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, was a robust economy and a robust private sector. And I would just add to that, that it's also the best means to ensure economic security and national security when we have both of those elements. I hope that you'll have that emblazoned and put on the wall there at the Development Finance Corporation, because I admire your words and agree with them with that slight addition. I'd like to step back and share just some observations from a trip I recently took, and I think I spoke with you before I undertook the trip to Chile, to Uruguay, to Colombia. I just left this morning a conference, an ASEAN-US Business Council conference. Everywhere we go, talking to leaders, we realize something very basic. They're trying to recover from the devastation of the coronavirus pandemic. Their economies are facing serious headwinds. Their debt burdens have increased. Social upheaval exists everywhere. Frankly, crime is up in each of the countries that I speak with. These are very real challenges. And you've got countries that are operating at the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're trying to put food on the table right now. And as I look at the DFC investment portfolio, what I see are a number of projects that are oriented toward lofty goals, but with ESG parameters on them. We're investing in billions of dollars in climate change projects, solar panels that require endless government subsidies. We're even doing a project in South Africa on equitable taxi transportation. So I'm trying to understand how you prioritize projects, particularly given the competitive environment that we're in, and this has been mentioned, I think, very clearly. We're competing every day. You've acknowledged who our top competitor is, and that's the CCP. How do you prioritize these projects?
Well, thank you for your comments and for your question, Senator. So we've been engaged in a process at DFC of thinking about, now that DFC is fully launched, is 3 years into operation, about how to refine our statement of priorities. And I mentioned them in my testimony. It reflects the areas that we've been working in, and I think they're broad and enduring enough that from administration to administration, they should be in place. That's infrastructure, energy, healthcare, agriculture and food, and support for small business. This is the 5 areas that if you look across our portfolio, it's 85, 90% of the activity that we do, and it should be where we're focusing our business development efforts, our client management efforts, trying to bring our whole toolkit of solutions to clients in that area to make a difference in infrastructure, energy, healthcare, food and ag, and small business support.
Well, I think that the countries that we're targeting to partner with will be most receptive if you focus on the very basic deliverables here, and the aspirational projects that may have some benefit at the higher levels of Maslow's hierarchy, I think should be reprioritized. I just want to get that point across. The second point has been emphasized earlier before, and that's the utilization of income-based criteria for the countries that you work in. I had a very frustrating conversation with the president of Uruguay, who really wants to work with us, yet our rules make it impossible for him to do so. So his only alternative is to, as he told me, to turn to China. And I think it just underscored for me the need to take a fresh look at this. And if you have any further comments on what we might be able to do in that regard, I'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the question. The BUILD Act gave us eligibility to work in lower income countries, lower middle and upper middle income countries. And that's by income classification from the World Bank, a categorization that the World Bank doesn't even use for their lending. What we think might make more sense is categorization based on the World Bank lending categories, which can take into account countries that haven't yet graduated, that haven't yet found the way to get to a position where commercial finance is the only option.
Well, I think
if we went to that category, Uruguay would become a country that we would be able to operate in.
I think we'll look forward to working with you on taking a more strategic view as opposed to sort of a dogmatic income approach. There's one last thing I'd like to, just a comment, I'd like to have you take a look at it and get back to my team if you might. And that's to take a look at the Hanjin port at Subic Bay in the Philippines, that project. I was deeply involved in that project in my previous role as U.S. Ambassador to Japan. I learned that CCP-affiliated entities were about to buy that shipyard out of bankruptcy. We were able to change that dynamic, put a U.S. private sector company in play for the equity component. The DFC was not able to play as I had imagined they would be able to play. And if you could just take a look at that project with your business perspective and get back to me and tell me what might have changed, and if your tool set had been different, that would have allowed you to play, if I'm asking that in a way that makes sense. I'd really like to just take a hard look at that one lesson I'm very, very familiar with and understand how an improvement or a modification of your tools could have allowed you to play a more effective role.
I definitely will do that. Seaports are an area of real emphasis for us. Shipyards, too. We just did a deal in Greece. We did a seaport in Ecuador, and we have a couple projects in our pipeline that I hope to be able to announce publicly later in the year that fit exactly the kind of strategic and developmental elements that you just referenced.
Thank you. I'll look forward to hearing back from you.
Thank you.